Right, it is now 6:30, so good evening everybody and welcome to this meeting of the Cabinet on the 23rd of June 2015. And may I say how nice it is to see so many people here. I just hope you're not all going to want to speak this evening, otherwise we could be here for some time. But we will begin with a few administrative points. First of all, the fire evacuation procedures. There are no fire alarms scheduled for this evening, therefore if the fire alarm should go off, we have to evacuate the building, and the fire exits are located at the rear, which is that end, and the side of this room. Please go down the stairs and meet in War Memorial Park, and if we have any people who are in any way disabled, there are special arrangements made for evacuation of them, should that be necessary. The second point is that this meeting is being webcast, as I alluded to earlier on, which means that we're now being broadcast live on the internet. So please be careful what you say, because it will be recorded for posterity. But also be aware that you may be seen by some of the cameras, possibly. I probably won't pick you up down there, but it's just possible that they may, and you will be visible. And third administrative points, if you have mobile phones with you, could you please all turn them to silent, and preferably not put them on the tables, because they vibrate and make a lot of noise if they're on silent. Good, so that's the admin points out the way. We begin the meeting with apologies for absence. There are no apologies for absence from any Cabinet members, but it is a great pleasure to do two things. Firstly, to welcome our new member, Councillor Robert Tate, over there. Welcome, Robert. And secondly, to congratulate Councillor Terry Reid on becoming the Deputy Leader. So, welcome as Deputy Leader for a change. The minutes of the Cabinet meeting of the 17th of March, are there any points, or can we take those as read? Yeah, take those as read. Good. Petitions, we have none. Urgent items, we have one urgent item, which is a paper which has been circulated to all members of the Cabinet, but because it's an urgent item, has not yet been circulated other than to all members of the Council. I believe that's the case, Chief Executive. It has gone to all members of the Council. Good. Which is just a briefing note by way of update on the initiative of creating, or potentially creating, a combined authority for all the authorities in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. Now, this is an initiative which has been trundling forward over the last few months, really in the light of the devolution debate, that the Scottish devolution vote did trigger much discussion on the potential for English devolution, and there has, as a result of that, been a lot of work which has been carried out in other parts of the country, where local authorities have come together to form combined authorities. And for instance, that's happened in Manchester, it's happening in Leeds, happening in Birmingham and various other parts of England, with a view to taking over more and more responsibility for certain aspects of local government from central government. So, for instance, in Manchester, they're taking over responsibility under this combined authority for police, for health, and various other activities. The concept which is being put forward for Hampshire and the Isle of Wight is that those authorities should come together to form a combined authority with a view to taking over similar, but not necessarily all of those responsibilities from central government. And at the same time, a number of responsibilities which are currently held by for instance, Hampshire County Council would be devolved down to district councils, to the borough council here, so that we would become masters of our own destiny in a number of areas where currently we rely upon Hampshire wide services to provide support. We are at the very first stages of considering this possibility. At the moment, that first stage consists of writing to the Secretary of State to say that there is an interest in looking at this possibility. That is happening at the moment. There was a meeting yesterday of the Hampshire and yesterday on Friday of the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Local Government Association, at which all councils in that area unanimously agreed that they would support writing to the Secretary of State that this was something that they will be interested in following up. I have today responded to the draft letter pointing out a few minor changes that needs to be considered. I've circulated that response to all cabinet members and to all group leaders today. I don't know whether that's gone to members, but if not, it might be a good idea to send that to all members as well. I think there are two things I would want to make very clear. Firstly, this in no way is doing away with the concept of the Borough Council. If anything, the Borough Council will become stronger as a result of this move, should it come to fruition. Secondly, we are in no way bound at all by this process or by this expression of interest which we've made so far. All the detailed work is still to be done. All the detailed negotiation is still to take place before we will even get to a stage where it will be possible to bring to either back to Cabinet or to full Council a proposal for agreement. And I have no idea at the moment how long that is likely to take. But we are a long way away from that being the case. The purpose of this note is just to bring everybody up to date so that the whole debate is being kept in the open, there's nothing being hidden. We did discuss this with group leaders some while ago, the prospect of this happening. It is not to be confused with any move towards a unitary authority. Unitary authority has got nothing to do with this. It is very simply looking at what is the best way to deliver improved services at lower cost for the residents of our borough, but particularly as Hampshire, on a Hampshire-wide basis, because we feel that there are opportunities, as leaders of the councils, we feel that there are opportunities to do more and better if we are given some more freedom by central government to be able to do it and to have more control over our own fundraising. And I think that is as much as it's appropriate to say at this stage, unless anybody has any questions. There really is nothing more to report than that very simple statement, but just so that everybody is aware of it. And no doubt I shall, once as this has now gone to all members, I shall be receiving lots of questions from them on the email about what it might mean. So I do think it might be appropriate that we hold a members' workshop or whatever for those that are interested to come along and just talk about it, to the extent that there is something to talk about at the moment. But we are very much in the concept stage at the moment and not in the definitive action stage. Right, so that is the urgent item just for noting. So is noted? Good, thank you. Appointments to executive committees. We have two to make. Firstly, the Basing View Executive Committee, and I have 3 nominations for the Basing View Executive Committee: Councillor Cathy Ottleton, Councillor John Isaac, Councillor Hayley Eachus. Agreed? And then secondly, for the Manydown Executive Committee, I say that so we don't get confused with all the other Manydown committees that we seem to have. And the nominations for that are Councillor Robert Tate, Councillor John Isaac, and Councillor Cathy Ottleton. Agreed? Good. Right, I'm now going to take the papers out of order because I'm not so sure that many of our guests this evening will be terribly interested in some of the items that we're going to be talking about a little bit later on. But you're very welcome to stay for them should you find the revenue and capital outturn to be of overriding excitement. Or maybe you want to stay and listen to Councillor Parker talking about it, I don't know. But we'll go instead straight to, I think, which is what you've come for, which is item 8, Market Chambers, Church Street, proposed one-year lease to Basingstoke Amateur Theatrical Society and BAT's Next Generation. Councillor Isaac, would you like to introduce the paper? And then I do have two speakers on the subject, Hannah Williams, and who is well known to us all, I think, and Councillor Parker. So, John.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I'm pleased to recommend to Cabinet the proposal that we grant a lease of 1 year to the Basingstoke Amateur Theatrical Society of the vacant space that we have at Market Chambers in the top of the town, so that they can use this to create a cultural hub. I was approached by Hannah Williams some time ago with this idea, and I'm conscious that the accommodation has not been occupied since 2012, so I thought this was a good opportunity for us to encourage what we want to do as a council, which is to enhance the arts and cultural offering in the town. BATS, if I can call you that, is a not-for-profit organisation which has got the primary aim of staging high-quality, affordable musical theatre. And it was formed as long ago as 1958, and that I understand you produce 2 musical theatre productions per year. And also associated with you is BAT's New Generation. I think I'm pleased to see that we've got a good representation of the young generation here tonight, and I think you're established to provide musical theatrical opportunities for 7 to 18-year-olds. Anyway, I recommend this to Cabinet. I think it as has been made clear from the outset, we are looking at the arts and culture offering in the town and the top of the town generally, and therefore this is a lease for 1 year on the understanding that this is a temporary arrangement while we further our plans on what should be done in the longer term to give us the arts and cultural life that we want for Basingstoke.
Thank you very much, sir. Could I ask you just to move your chair slightly towards Terry, because just for the people who are watching you on television, they had half your body there, which is in my case, half your body is probably as much as most people's whole body, but let's not worry. I said in my case. In your case. Yes. Can I ask the first? Stop this silly bickering. Hannah, would you like to come forward and put us out of our misery over here on the... I didn't decide it wouldn't be worth having. You do, yes. Good evening, first of all. It's the big one in the middle there. Yep. And make sure these chairs are... They are. Officially you have 2 minutes. I will put this on for you. You can see the light, so you roughly got an indication. But given the fact there's not too many speakers tonight, we shall not be too serious.
I felt, Mr. Chairman, councillors, I felt I should come and explain to you why Market Chambers is so special to me. Before I say that, I found out that Market Chambers had been empty for 3 years, last November. Now, I did not know Councillor John Isaac before that, but I have met him since, and I have to say that he's been incredibly patient, and he's had the long version. You'll be pleased to know that I'm giving you the abbreviated version. But he's had the whole history of how we started a professional company in 1974, how we had a thriving professional company, really exciting times with Derek Jacobi and heaven knows coming to this town. We had a professional company, and sadly, over the last 4 years, we have lost it. I didn't really think of it as market chambers. I actually thought of it as half of the Haymarket Theatre, because I actually worked in there as the head of marketing, which sounds very grand, because I didn't have a department. It was just myself and one girl from school on work experience. But I worked from there. Prior to that, I had worked at the Shrubbery. And then, in a grave act of cultural vandalism, and I mean that, Hampshire County Council razed it to the ground. A place that had been the home of the Burberry family for 40 years, a maternity home for 27 years, the home of the Horseshoe Theatre Company for 16 years. And what do we do then? If you've got a professional company, we nearly went out of business 20 years ago. It's always up and down in the theatre. We nearly went out of business. But Glyn Williams, one of the officers of the council, he was absolutely brilliant. He had a brainwave. They hadn't found it easy to rent out those offices in Church Street, even in those days. But he said we could leave the shops at the bottom. They're always, it's like playing drafts down there, by the way. But we could convert it all, put a door from the Haymarket into the other part, have a rehearsal space the same size as the Haymarket stage, offices. I had a grand office, and that would be fantastic. We were very excited about it. And I was very involved in the preparation of this. Can you understand that when I realised that it had been given up 3 years ago, and I know that the fantastic amateurs that we have in the town are here, there and everywhere, all over the town. There are dance schools in drafty halls with no heating in the winter sometimes. And this space is so wonderful for rehearsal. And also, it could be the cultural hub that you are looking for. And I know you have to have a leap of faith, but they have to have a leap of faith too, because they've not run a building. I have, because when I was up at the Shrubbery, we were expected to multitask. I was not just the marketing officer for the Haymarket and the professional company. I was what I used to call myself the housekeeper. And I sublet the Shrubbery. I mean, I was the one that actually did it, to a jazz group, to a poetry group, to anything connected with the arts. We had 1,000 people a week using the Shrubbery, and the rent went to the professional company. And I could tell you many other things that happened there. I can see that this could be such an asset to the top of the town, to the amateur movement, and there is little more to say than that, other than I should mention that Charlotte Peace, she's not here, is she? No. Charlotte Peace, the officer, has been fantastic too. So I just want to thank Councillor Isaac for being so tolerant, because I promise you, he's had the whole long story. And Charlotte Peace, who has been marvellous. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And thank you for giving us a view of Councillor Isaac fewer than the rest of us have ever seen. So, yes. Councillor Parker, are you right at the back there, I think? Good evening to you. You know the form. You turn yourself on. I've decided that I didn't bother with the clock the last time. I'm not going to bother now. So I'm sure I can rely on you to be succinct.
This is an even shorter version. But if I may, Leader, just say also as an occasional visiting member of the opposition, endorse your welcome to Councillor Tate to the Cabinet. I look forward to doing battle over the next months, and also could I presume just to congratulate Councillor Terry Reid on her appointment as Deputy Leader. I'm here this evening to add my support to these proposals, and I would like to say a personal thank you to Councillor Isaac for allowing this use of market chambers. I know it will be put to good use, and your vote of confidence will be well rewarded through the productions put on by BATS and BAT's next generation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. John, would you like to sum up then? Unless are there any points you wish to? You promised you were going to be quiet this evening.
Well, I just want to say, Leader, for the benefit of the older folk listening, sometimes we have to make tough financial decisions, but it's important that all those listening know that beneath the surface, many of us are passionate about the arts in our own individual ways. I can only say from my own personal experience that I perform in an amateur dramatic capacity once or twice a year, singing funny songs, dancing funny dances and wearing funny clothes. And it's one of the most pleasurable things I can do compared to many of the other things I have to do in a year, excluding council meetings, of course. For the younger folk present, can I say this, Leader? When I was 15, 16, I got involved in forming a little theatre company. And we did it because we found that we weren't getting the star parts in the school play. And we thought we could contribute something, and we put on little performances just after lunch. So we put a leaflet out at lunchtime, and when everyone was digesting their food, they came and laughed at us, because it was mainly humorous. It went down very well. But it gave me the confidence to do so many things that I was able to do later in life. Within a few years, I was able to address a meeting of over 1,000 people, which I know, if I hadn't had that confidence to stand up on a stage with just one other person and tell funny stories, or to wear funny clothes, or the like, I would never have been able to do that later in life. So the skills that are being picked up by the younger folk as a result of this are invaluable. It may not mean that you're going to be Darcy Bustle or whoever it is at the end of this process, but it might mean that you become a leading person in a company who can stand up in front of many people and say this is what should happen, or a headmistress or headmaster, and be able to tell other teachers what should happen and address many parents with confidence, or many other life skills. So I'm glad that we are playing our part in assisting this organisation to continue its great work.
Thank you. Anybody else? If not, I will ask John to sum up before I add a footnote at the end of it.
Well, thank you, everyone, and I'm glad there's so much support for this. And I must say that my meetings with Hannah Williams were always entertaining, and I was always impressed with her enthusiasm and determination. And she's a very, very persuasive lady. But this is one of those instances where it's right that the council does take something of a leap in the dark. We're subsidising this to the tune of £9,500 a year. But I'm very confident that it's going to be successful, and so I wish you all the best with your productions and your use of this building.
Thank you very much. So I think, just in conclusion then, before we put it to the vote, I don't think we need to, but we will have to officially. I think the point you were making earlier on, Councillor Isaac, about this being a one-year lease and it's a short-term thing, it's important to restate this, that this is not necessarily a permanent solution. That is not to say that we don't believe that there should be a permanent solution to finding a cultural hub in the centre of the town where we can have the right sort of space for people to, particularly for the performing arts, to grow and to thrive. I only say that because we need to look at the total use of our buildings going forward, particularly within the centre. But it's not a word of caution in any way, other than we may have to come with another proposal at a later stage if we find a better solution to provision of this kind of facility. But I would support and totally endorse the belief which has been expressed on several sides here that encouragement of these kind of activities are tremendously beneficial, both from the point of view of those taking part in them as performers and for those enjoying the performances as well. There is something very exciting about going to see live music, live theatre, live dance, which is totally separate from what you might get on television or through video or whatever. And it would be dreadful if that was to die out or not be available locally. And I think that's something which we do need to ensure that we continue to support fully. I'm not going to tell you about my theatrical career in the past, though I have been known to perform on occasions. Actually was once a member of the Footlights for a while. So, are we all agree this is a very good thing to be doing? Good.
Yeah,
Good. Thank you very much, and thank you very much to our speakers. So, as I say, you're more than welcome to stay for the rest, but I'm quite happy to have a 1-minute pause if you wish to leave at this stage. I do understand you might not want to stay for the rest. I leave it to you to decide. Thank you. Thank you very much.
And you're all invited to Joseph and the Mason Technical. And you're also invited to Greece in the Haymarket Theatre. The Joseph is in Queen Mary's because as yet we haven't graduated to the Haymarket Theatre, but that will happen. So Joseph in, when is it? October. And Greece, November. You see, it started already. It started already.
Right. I'm afraid I doubt very much whether the webcast would have picked up any of those, though we've noted it. But if you could make sure that the information gets to whoever is the appropriate person here, I'm sure we can get it onto the website so that it's publicised on the website. And I would be absolutely convinced that the Gazette will be helping to publicise all this.
Jess knows all about it.
Thank you all very much. Right, members, whilst the others are leaving, could you come back to item 7 on the agenda, which is paper B, is the land adjoining Aldermaston Triangle, land required for the A340 highways improvements. Councillor Isaac, do you want to lead on this?
Yes, thank you, Leader. This concerns land owned by the borough at Aldermaston Triangle, and the proposal is to dispose of it at nil value to Hampshire County Council to enable highways improvement works to be undertaken. The background here is that we have already approved as a Cabinet the proposed sale of the land to Bovis Homes for the provision of 100 new homes, including 40 affordable homes or thereabouts. So that's very positive development, and by agreeing to do this tonight, there will be some material improvements to the highways in and around that part of borough. The A340 would be widened into two lanes both north and south. There would be improvements to the Lodge Junction and also to the Priestley Road Junction, which would be widened with additional lanes, and not to forget that there would be a provision of footpaths and cycleways. In their turn, Hampshire County Council and the HCA are putting some of their own land in at nil value. The other very encouraging aspect of all this is that the works for these improvements are due to start later this year, and they should be completed by 2017. So I think it's a win-win situation here. I'm really looking forward to seeing the completed development by Bovis Homes. But there's a period of consultation to take place with local residents before we get much further on with that. So this is all part and parcel of a general improvement and in that area and provision of needed housing.
Good, thank you very much. Any comments? I think it's very straightforward. If no other points, agreed? Good, thank you. Then let's move straight on to item 9, Treasury Management Annual Report. Again, this is Councillor Isaac to introduce this, but Councillor Parker, you would like to speak on this, I think. So if you want to come forward, and then we can move straight from one once the paper has been introduced. Councillor Isaac.
Thank you, Leader. This is the annual report on our Treasury management activities. The outcome for the year 14-15 is that overall our net interest and investment income was 3.088 million. That was against an original estimate of 3.5 million pounds. Obviously, that shortfall needs some explanation, but just to note that that shortfall has been met through the revenue surplus in the budget for that year that I shall also be referring to next. So we've had an overall return of 1.9% versus an original estimate of 2.28%. The explanation for this is primarily that falling gilt yields have meant that the interest that we can earn has been lower than we expected. It's incredibly difficult to forecast where gilt returns are going to be. It's also very difficult to ensure that we do as we always want to do, which is ensure prudently and to maintain liquidity and invest in the right substantial safe banks and institutions. So it has been difficult to reinvest money as our gilts have expired. Changes that we have made during the year are the use of diversified credit funds. We've in order to look for higher returns, we invested from the start of 2015 £20 million in 2 funds, and I'm pleased to report that they've generated 2.72% return. It's part of an ongoing challenge we have as a borough to make our investments work as hard as possible, but to do so wisely and as I say, maintaining liquidity.
Thank you very much. Councillor Parker, when you're ready, you have 4 minutes, as you know.
Thank you. To start, I think I'd like to just say that this council is blessed in as much as the fact that we have a well-established, long-serving team of officers who look after our finances, ably led by Kevin Jack West. And the report reflects the safe hands that our finances are in. But I have one major disappointment in the content of this report, inasmuch that we have now an adopted ethical investment policy. And within this report, the opportunity to record that or draw reference to that has been missed out. I've checked and looked for it, and it is not there. I don't want to say what it should say, but we do draw reference to all types of investments remained within the agreed strategy. We draw attention to this council's treasury management policy objectives. We talk about prudential indices, but there is no mention, and I'd ask for somebody perhaps to address this and look at this. There should at least be a paragraph that identifies and acknowledges that we are starting down that route of addressing the important issue of investment areas for our residents' funds. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Isaac.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Parker. let me reassure you that the officers have been applying the policies that have been agreed by council. The fact that it's not mentioned here does not mean that we haven't been applying the ethical policies. But you make a fair point, and we'll look into that. And if there needs to be a restatement during, as this is an annual statement, then I have no difficulty with that.
I was just going to ask the question. I haven't actually got it in front of me. I've misplaced it somewhere. What it says on the decision notice, and whether or not there is an opportunity to include, here they are, I've just found it, on there some statement to cover that point, but no. Oh, there isn't. I'm sorry, of course not. Yeah, it's for noting it. Oh, well, in that case, I think the point's well made. Thank you for making it, and I'm sure it will be picked up by officers and by portfolio holders in the future. You might as well stay there, Stuart, rather than keep getting up and down, because we're moving straight on to the revenue and capital outturn. Councillor Isaac again.
For the last time tonight, yes, I think, I hope, anyway. Right, let me just find that. Yes, as the leader says, this is the revenue and capital outturn for 2014-15. The outturn for the year is that we are showing a net surplus of 1.366 million, and this is accounted for by expenditure, which is about $1 million under budget, but also income, which has exceeded budget by £300,000. The explanation for the surplus, which some will regard as a positive, but I think in budgeting terms, we always the aim should always be to get to an outturn that as closely mirrors the original budget and the estimate as possible. Though do bear in mind there are many moving parts in a budget of in excess of £40 million that we directly control. But some of the savings have been a reflection on reduced staff costs and also IT savings, and some of the higher income that we've generated have come from unexpected uplifts in our rents and also through our planning fees. But at an early point in the year, the officers have been alert to these trends, and we have acted appropriately, and we have looked to allocate the projected surplus into areas such as buying additional houses to prevent homelessness. So I'm pleased that that's been put into effect swiftly, and also to allocate more money for the top of the town, as well as, of course, being able to fund the shortfall in the treasury management revenues. But this is sort of an ongoing challenge for us as a borough, and conversely, we are facing increasing challenges to balance the budget in relation as a result of the reduced government funding that we are receiving, and that trend is not going to change anytime soon. But overall, I commend the budget outturn to Cabinet, and would welcome your endorsement.
Councillor Parker.
I'm not this evening going to get at all technical. It's far too comprehensive paper to address all the pounds, shillings and pences, but I think in itself it's a good result. It's a couple of observations, if I may, particular in regard to the area of public conveniences. I'd like just to say that whilst I accept in principle that credit should be given to achieving savings in budget outcomes, but not when the service delivered suffers. And this is the case for visitors to Eastrock Park. The toilets are not, in my view, maintained to a satisfactory level. Often they smell and are in bad need of regular deep steam clean. So I would urge the new Cabinet member, Councillor Tate, to review the required standards for all of the borough-serviced public conveniences and introduce improvements rather than banking savings and reducing future years' budgets for what is, in my view, an essential provision for both young and elderly residents. If I could just move on quickly, because buried in amongst the papers was the interesting report on home and community building energy improvements, which I have to say is welcomed, but regrettably, as an environmentalist, perhaps a bit late. Thank you. I don't think it's appropriate for you to respond on conveniences, and I think Councillor Tate no doubt has taken note of that fact, and for the moment we will leave it there. Other than that, John, unless there's anything else you want to add, I would just like to add as you know, I've always had a view that we ought to get better at our budgeting and the way that we manage our funds, and I think we are. There's always room for improvement, but each year we are getting better at doing it, and I think the officers, particularly in the finance department, are working very closely with the operational teams to make sure that our budgeting does get more and more accurate as it goes forward, and to get a result which actually comes out to be whatever 1/40th is as a percent is outturn is a very good result at the end of the day. Equally, it in some ways it's good to know that at a time when we are expecting there to be more and more draconian cuts to the funding coming from central government to local government, that we at least have some flexibility there to look for the future, which is an important aspect of ensuring that we can maintain services at our convenience, I think, if I can use a terrible joke, but never mind. Yes, we could go on like this down the way. Yes. However, are we all happy to recommend this to full council? This goes to full council for adoption, where no doubt some of the issues will be raised again at that stage. I'm sure they will. Yes. That's absolutely. That's rather like our budgeting. We're fairly certain of that one. Good. Thank you very much, Councillor Parker. In which case, let's move on. I think have we done with Councillor Isaac now? I think we have, haven't we? And we can move instead to the housing allocations policy, and Councillor Mrs. Reid.
Thank you, Leader. This is incorporating a new statutory provision from government for the allocations policy. It's a minor change to the existing allocations policy. Colleagues will know that we took the allocations policy through a fairly comprehensive review over the last couple of years, meeting with partners, with residents, with members, and we reflected from that consultation the wish, particularly of local residents, to have a new allocations policy which reflected very strongly a local membership, if you like, of the scheme, so that people who live locally, who work locally, would have preference within the allocations policy. So the allocations policy was approved in December. It's being worked through now in terms of implementation, and that should be complete by the autumn, by the middle of the autumn. But in April, about 3 weeks before the general election, the late lamented Mr. Eric Pickles introduced this new statutory instrument, which we have to incorporate, and we had to incorporate immediately. And it's basically to enable social tenants who need to move for work-related reasons to gain reasonable preference within allocation policy. And it also asks us to set aside a proportion of lets to enable such moves, and the guidance strongly encourages a quota of at least 1% of our lettings. So as colleagues will see, it will actually only affect a very small number of lettings within the allocations policy. But it was something that we had to comply with immediately, so we did, and it's going through Cabinet now just as sort of retrospective approval for something that we had to introduce in April. So I would ask for Cabinet support for this.
Thank you, Councillor Reid. I think ought to point out for the record that, as to the best of my knowledge, Eric Pickles is not actually dead. That was purely a turn of phrase. And in fact, he has been knighted, and therefore, congratulations to him on his knighthood. Comments, anybody? If not, I think this is we don't have any alternative. It has to be done, and we hereby pass it through. Yeah. Good. In which case, that brings us to the end of the meeting at 19:15, I think. Thank you all very much.